There were once 25 tin soldiers who were all brothers because they were all made from the same metal. An old tin spoon had been melted down and poured into a mold to form the toy soldiers. Each one stood at attention in his smart red and blue uniform, holding a rifle on the shoulder and looking straight ahead. Tin soldiers was the first sound that they heard in this world as a little boy lifted the lid off of their box and shouted in delight. This was his birthday present, and he clapped his hands in joy. He started setting up the soldiers on the table and found that they were all alike except one who had only one leg. This soldier was the last one to be made. Since there wasn't enough melted tin left to fill the mold, he was missing a leg. But he stood firmly on his one leg, and that caused him to be different from the others. On the table, there were also other toys, and the most attractive of these was a beautiful paper castle. Through its little windows, you could see right into the rooms. In front of the castle, there were little trees surrounding a mirror that looked like a lake. On it were some wax swans that seemed to be swimming on the lake and seeing their own reflections in the water. All of this was very beautiful, but even prettier was the little lady standing at the open door of the castle. She was made of paper and wore a dress made of fine muslin. A blue ribbon passed over her shoulders like a scarf and was held in place by a shiny tinsel rose that was almost as large as her face. The little lady was a dancer whose arms were both stretched out. One of her legs was lifted so high behind her that the tin soldier couldn't see it. So he thought that she just had one leg, like him. She would make a great wife for me, he thought, but maybe she is too fine, as she lives in a castle and I only live in a box with 24 other guys. That's no place for her, but still, I would like to get to know her. So the soldier lay down behind the jack-in-the-box so that he could get a better view of the lovely dancer, who continued to stand on one leg without losing her balance. When the evening came, the other tin soldiers were put back into their box, and the people of the house went to bed. Then the toys started playing by themselves. They visited each other, had play fights, and partied and danced. The tin soldiers rattled inside their box because they wanted to join the fun, but they couldn't get the lid off of the box. The nutcrackers played leapfrog, and the pencil jumped up and down on the table. There was such a racket that the canary woke up and started speaking in poetry. The only ones that didn't move were the tin soldier and the dancer, who remained balanced on one leg. The soldier never took his eyes off of the pretty little dancer the whole time. At midnight, the clock struck 12, and suddenly, the lid popped off of the jack-in-the-box. Out jumped a little black goblin, who said, "Tin soldier, do not wish for what does not belong to you." The tin soldier pretended not to hear. "Very well," said the goblin. "Just wait until tomorrow." The next morning, the children came in and placed the tin soldier on the windowsill. Now, whether it was the goblin who did it, or if it was simply because of the wind, no one knows. But suddenly, the window flew open and a gust of air blew the tin soldier outside. He fell headfirst from the 3rd floor down to the street below. It was a terrible fall, and he landed upside down with his rifle stuck between 2 stones and his one leg pointing up in the air. The little boy and the maid came down to look for him and almost stepped on him, but they didn't see him. If the soldier had called out, "Here I am," they would have found him, but he was too proud to cry out for help while in his uniform. Soon, it began to rain. The drops fell faster and faster until it was a very heavy shower. After this rainstorm was over, a couple of boys passed by. One of them said, "Hey, look, there's a tin soldier. Let's send him sailing." So, they made a boat out of a newspaper, placed the tin soldier in the middle of it, and put it in the fast-flowing gutter at the side of the street. They ran beside the boat, clapping their hands. The boat rocked from side to side in the waves of the quickly moving rainwater. It even spun around, causing the soldier to tremble. But he remained at attention, holding his rifle firmly and looking straight ahead. All of a sudden, the boat entered a tunnel where it was dark, just like in the box at home. "Where am I going?" the soldier wondered. "This must be the goblin's fault, I'm sure. If the pretty little lady was here with me, I wouldn't even care about the darkness." Out jumped a big water rat who lived in the sewer. "Do you have a passport?" he demanded. "Let me see it." But the tin soldier pretended not to hear and held onto his rifle tighter than ever. The water pushed the boat forward, and the rat chased after it, gnashing his teeth. He yelled to the sticks and straws, "Stop him! Stop him! He hasn't paid his toll! He hasn't shown his passport!" But the strong water current pushed the boat forward faster and faster. Now the soldier could see light at the end of the tunnel. He also heard a roar that would frighten the bravest of men. Suddenly, the boat shot out of the end of the tunnel in a waterfall that lands in a canal. The boat spun around a few times and started filling up with water. Nothing could stop it from sinking now. The tin soldier held onto his rifle tightly, looked straight ahead, and steadfastly remained at attention so that he did not appear to be afraid. The water came up to his neck as the paper boat became softer and wetter. Finally, the water went right over his head. He thought of the pretty little dancer that he would never see again, and the words of an old song sounded in his ears. Farewell, soldier, ever brave, drifting on towards your grave. Then the paper boat broke apart, and the soldier started sinking towards the bottom. Suddenly, he was swallowed by a large fish. Was it ever dark inside the fish, even darker than in the tunnel? There was very little room to move because the fish's stomach was so narrow. But he remained steadfastly at attention with his rifle on his shoulder. The fish swam back and forth, making all kinds of lively movements. At last, the fish was very still. After a while, a flash of lightning seemed to pass through him, and he could see daylight. A voice cried out, "Look! Here is the tin soldier!" The fish had been caught, was taken to the market, and sold to the cook, who brought it into the kitchen and cut it open with a big knife. She picked up the tin soldier by the waist and held him up between her thumb and index finger. Everybody wanted to see the remarkable tin soldier who had traveled inside of a fish. But he was not proud of his journey. They put him on the table, and, wonder of wonders, there he was in the very same room from which he had fallen, with the same children, the same toys, the same paper castle, and the same pretty little dancer who was still balanced on one leg. The tin soldier was so happy to see her that he almost wept tin tears, but he managed to keep them back. He looked at her and she looked at him, but neither said a word. All of a sudden, one of the boys grabbed the tin soldier and threw him into the hot stove. He had no reason for doing this, so it must have been the goblin's fault. Flames surrounded the soldier, and the heat was terrible, but he couldn't tell if it was from the real fire or from the burning love that he felt for the little dancer. He could see that the bright colors had faded from his uniform, although whether it was from his journey or simply from grief, nobody could say. He looked at the pretty dancer, and she looked at him as he felt himself melting away. He remained steadfastly at attention when suddenly the door opened. A gust of wind blew the dancer right into the stove, where she landed beside the tin soldier, caught fire, and burned up. The soldier melted down into a lump of tin. The next morning, when the maid came to clean the ashes out of the stove, she found that the soldier had melted down into the shape of a little tin heart. But of the dancer, all that was left was the tinsel rose, which was burned as black as coal.